Two receivers to the top, two to the bottom. Here comes pressure again and again. It's Alontae Taylor, and I think Alontae Taylor brings him down. His third sack.
Welcome on into Inside Black and Gold, a Victory Monday edition. Steve Geller along with Jeff Nowak, and man, oh man, definitely thought the Saints would win the game, but I don't think anybody saw a 47-10 whooping of the Panthers coming.
Wait, hold on. What? Oh, Alontae Taylor just got another sack. Wait. Okay, there's another Saints touchdown. They're still scoring. It's crazy. All we need is a Derek Carr running off the field screaming, "You like that?" You know what I'm talking about? The Kirk Cousins clip when he was with Washington, when he's running off the field and he just stares directly into the camera. "You like that?" And okay, get out of here, you whatever. Yeah, just you awkward Michigan Stater. But yeah, that was fun. Who didn't see that coming? I mean, that was exactly how you draw it up, right?
It definitely felt like a dream sequence in the dome, and I started to go, wait a minute, is this really happening right now? That you go down first drive, you score a touchdown, and then immediately the next play is a pick. You're like, what is happening here?
You can almost hear people backpedaling on their takes in real time. It's awesome. I'm so happy about it. And yeah, I mean, here's the thing, and we'll have a lot to talk about. We're going to kind of do the kind of standard studs and duds things, but we don't have a lot of duds to talk about. So it's kind of going to be studs and studs. And then we'll do a live mailbag in the final segment. So if you have questions, comments, throw them in there. I'm sure you have a lot of opinions. I have a lot of opinions. I have a lot of happy opinions. We might be a positive podcast for once. Oh my God, it's crazy. But no, the funny thing is going to be watching people try to justify, well, I mean, yeah, the Saints are still bad. They just beat the Panthers, right?
Is it the Panthers are good, or the Saints good, or the Panthers just bad?
And the answer is more than one thing can be true. But here's the thing, here's why it doesn't matter, at least to the extent of just eat your crow and move on. You were wrong in that, it's not that the Panthers aren't bad. It's that we came into this season and so many people were trying to convince you that the Saints were right next to the Panthers. I don't think anyone watches the Panthers be bad and is stunned. Wow, this 2-win team from last year is bad. What the thing is, a lot of people were trying to tell you going into this season that the Saints were on the same level as that 2-win Panthers team. That was bullshit from the start. It's still bullshit. And what you saw is why. Does that look like a 2-win team to you? Ben Kurt, what a tool. He wouldn't even he wouldn't even tweet "Hey, I was wrong." He buried it in a thread. I guess the Panthers are really that bad. So I'm just gonna, every time he tweets about the Saints, I'm just gonna reply with the same you dropped this meme with a clown face.
So emoji. He had the Saints at 1 win?
Yeah. He was the Saints might win 1 game this year.
We got it.
I guess they're already overachieving. But no, and no, we shouldn't overreact to what the Saints did in terms of, yeah, you beat the Panthers by a lot. That said, this is an NFL team. I don't care who you're playing. You beat down an NFL opponent. You have to put your scrubs in at the end of the game like you're playing Nickel State. And we're supposed to talk about that don't get too excited. It's definitely not a thing. Now, I would be the first to tell you never to overreact to what you see in week 1. And the best example you can have is a Saints example. And it's 2021 going to Jacksonville, beating the Packers 38-3, right? Never overreact to what happens in week 1. That said, you can get excited about your team. Don't let anyone tell you, hey, don't get excited about what the Saints did in that game. That is a bullshit take. That is a garbage take. You should be excited about what you saw because that's the vision. That's what it's supposed to look like. And I'm excited. I'm fired up about it. I didn't know what to expect. There was a scenario, there was a reality coming into that game and going out of that game where we're talking about, holy shit, this all went so badly that no redeeming this. And instead, what you got was success at every single level. The only thing that went bad was probably a couple injuries that you have a little concern about, with Marshawn Lattimore dealing with a hamstring. Lucas Patrick went out with a toe injury. Boston Moreau, I don't think the concussion is really something to be concerned about. He was in the locker room and looks fine. And then, Willie Gay, I think, left early. Tyrann Matthews dealing with a heel deal as a heel deal. I don't know. Like, every single thing the Saints did worked, whether it was Blake Grupe, whether it was Willie Gay, whether it was Chase Young, whether it was Derek Carr, whether it was the run game, whether it was the offensive line, everything worked. And all you can hope for coming out of that game against the Panthers is that you build confidence going into a very, very difficult stretch of your schedule.
Speaking of confidence, you saw that clip from Fox Sports, The Real. Derek Carr is telling Horn, whatever was going back and forth, he's like, I threw 3 touchdowns on you.
Yeah, that's my amateur lip reading, is that, like, I can't say for sure that's what Derek said, but I'm pretty sure that's exactly what he said. Because it was after Derek, I think there's that scramble or the kind of sneak play where he got like 4 or 5 yards and he got up and he kind of jokingly did the LeBron, like, and JC said something to him and he was just like, what are you talking about? I got 3 touchdowns on you. Like, not your team, yes, on your head. And it's true. But man, I'm excited.
That kind of pettiness will endear Saints fans for sure.
Oh yeah, that's the type of, it's funny because there's this idea that Derek Carr is a me first guy and he can't be someone you can get behind, and there's just no redeeming so much of it. And I'm here to tell you, like, he's not a bad dude. He gets excited. He plays football, man. Like, there's a reality where we can get very excited about this offense with Derek Carr leading it, but you have to allow that to happen. You can't parse out everything he says and come up with the reasons that you hate him. Like Drew Brees. I mean, everyone wants to act like Drew Brees as this effervescent. Drew Brees had the personality of a toaster oven, but he was our toaster oven. So we embraced it. And, there's a reason he didn't make it as a broadcaster, right? But, like, that's what it is. It's endearing yourself to the fan base, and hopefully he did that, right? And I think you have to be self-deprecating. I was critical of him not putting himself out there in the community as much as he probably should have in year one. I think he would agree with that based on how he's been operating. So, we'll see. But we're going to talk more about the offense in the second segment. This first segment, I want to talk about a couple things that went bad, and then I want to talk about the defense and what went well. First of all, 10 penalties, 95 yards. I kind of look at that as, hey, the coaches are probably a little bit, like, they won't tell you they're a little happy about it, but I think they are probably going into today. It's like, well, at least something went bad enough that we can go in there and complain about something, because no coach wants to walk into a meeting room and be like, you guys were perfect, no notes.
Pizza for everyone.
Yeah. 10 penalties, 95 yards, in a close game, which, the Saints will be playing close games. That can lose you a game. So what I will say is there were no repeat offenders. Of all the 10 penalties, there were 10 different players. A lot of different reasons. So I wasn't a fan of that. So we'll have to fix that. I wasn't a fan of the punter, which I've been critical on Matt Hayball, and I'm still going to be critical on Matt Hayball because I haven't seen a guy who necessarily is an NFL punter right now. It's probably not the best scenario when you're a guy who sits on the sideline for 3 quarters and suddenly has to go and punt for the first time in your NFL career. The Saints scored on their first 9 possessions of that game. And then Matt had to go in there and punt twice, and they were ugly punts. The first one was like a 33-yard net punt. The second one, I think he got a very generous spot on. I was literally where it went out of bounds, and I was standing at the 18-yard line, and he got spotted at the 13. So it might look a little better than it was. But even then, it was like a kick from the 48 that you kicked out of bounds. If you're angling a ball out of bounds, you got to be more aggressive than the 13. Like if you're not trying to get it to check up the way that most punters would do, you got to be more aggressive than that. So we'll see. Like, I'm not sold that he's got a firm grasp on that job. We'll see how it goes, but that's one thing I'll be negative of. I had to really fish for some negativity in this game. The other thing is, like, hey, I'm just tired of the backup quarterback conversation, like backup quarterback drama. Like, can we shelve it? Can we not talk about that? Like, I'm just so tired of it. Like, the funny thing is, this is a game where the backup actually got on the field.
But just leave all the backup hype for definitely next training camp, please.
Yeah. We'll see how the next few weeks go, and if the Rattler hive starts to emerge again. But if the offense is looking anything remotely like what it did, it's not a conversation we need to be having anytime soon. And the backup is just that, the backup. We'll have the heir apparent conversation when there's an heir apparent conversation to be had. That's it. That's all the negativity I could muster from this game.
The muff punt deal.
Oh, yeah. That was yes, Cedric Wilson. Now, I like me some Cedric Wilson.
Right.
Here's the thing. When you
But
put
we're looking for negatives here, so.
When you put a veteran back there to field a punt,
right.
The point is you trust him, that he's got hands. If I'm and like this is not the first time he struggled against San Francisco in the preseason in terms of some decisions on field and kicks. So it's like, if you're not really getting that job done, why don't you just throw Mason Tipton back there and let him do it? Because I'd rather at least see what he's got. If we're going to throw somebody back there you don't trust anyway.
Hey, that might be the case going forward now. Who knows?
Yeah, and I don't think that's going to be something where you say like, oh, Cedric's got to worry for his job. But, definitely not a good thing. So we'll see. Because like that was like a minute to go.
Yeah.
Obviously this game was out of reach by the second quarter. But if, in a close game, obviously, it's tough because he wouldn't even be fielding a kick in a close game. But say Rashid got hurt and you had to go with a backup return guy throughout an entire game, I don't think I'd be comfortable going with Cedric. So that's a good point. I actually had that in my 3 up, 3 down. I forgot to mention it. I'm just so all over the place right now.
Like you said, though, there was just so much positive from it. The few things that were negative, that definitely stood out. Obviously, when you're turning the ball over, or else the Saints would have had a clean game and would have had none. They had 3 takeaways and that 1 giveaway right there.
Yeah, 3 takeaways, and by all 3 safeties, right? Like we went into the game like, what's one of your big questions? Okay, do the Saints have what it takes in safety? Is safety a weak spot?
We'll show you.
In this game, all 3 safeties, Tyrann Mathieu, Will Harris, who started despite the depth chart lying to you earlier in the week, and Jordan Howden. Will Harris got an interception on the first play of the game for the Panthers. Jordan Howden got his first interception of his career in the second half, and Tyrann Mathieu forced a fumble in this game as well. So
forced it and jumped on it. That was like, this dude is just awesome.
So, it's funny because it's like when the pass rush is so effective and when you have linebackers that you trust and you just have playmakers at every level, safeties, all they have to worry about is going around and making plays and being that production, like DA has called it, it's a production-based position. Like, I need those guys to be tackling, to be picking off balls, to be picking up fumbles, right? That's what it was, and that's what you got. So that's definitely a good thing to see. That's definitely one of my ups. The other, and we'll just talk about it now. We'll get it out of the way. Alontae Taylor is a stud, man. He is every bit.
Is he at least leading the NFL in sacks right now, or no? Is someone else get more than 3 yesterday?
I haven't checked the stats, but I did watch a lot of the highlights from around the league. I would guess TJ Watt must have had at least 3 sacks in that game, which I am.
Alontae's tied with Greg Russo of Buffalo at 3.
Okay, how many did TJ Watt get?
Let me see here. TJ. I don't know, bro.
He's got at least 2.
No.
Really? I feel like he was, one of them, I think he got taken away by a penalty. Maybe that's what it is. Because he was in Kirk Cousins' grill. I guess he only had 1. He was in
Montravius Adams had 1.
Yeah, he was in Kirk Cousins' grill all game, which, I am more than ready to take some victory laps on these Falcons fans already. It's like, it's week 1. I get it. Don't overreact to week 1. Well, you were already overreacting in week 0. So just jump off a cliff. I don't care. Like, y'all told me that's like, there's no, the reason we went with Kirk Cousins is because he's a perfect fit, right? You know what he looked like? Derek Carr last year. Weird. Almost like you could have seen that coming. When you had a 36-year-old coming off a torn Achilles, it's not going to be a seamless transition.
Well, he had
to be sitting there.
He had all those snaps in the preseason too.
I'm sorry?
He had all those snaps in the preseason too.
Cousins. You didn't get a single one, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah. And that, who's going to be, it's funny. Everyone was like, if the Saints start slow, you're going to hear Rattler chants. How long do you think it takes before the Falcons start hearing some Penix chants? Probably not that long. So we'll see. Raheem's going to have some decisions to make either way.
And I think, like we mentioned it here, it's like we were both I'm worried more about Tampa Bay, and they definitely showed it yesterday too.
Well, here's the thing, and this is what I was saying all preseason, and all I saw yesterday was that my take proven true, which is You don't have to. You are perfectly correct to say this Saints team has serious questions. This Saints team is not one that should consider itself in the top 10 of the NFL based on what we know. But if you're going to sit there and try to tell me, and you look at power rankings, and you're going to put the Saints at like 28, and you're going to put the Bucks at like 15, and say, "Oh, this could be a sneaky good team." These are the exact same teams in terms of their situations, right? You're talking about veteran quarterbacks who are kind of on their second life and trying to figure things out. Derek Carr and Baker Mayfield, if you look at the numbers, are virtually identical. Baker actually had a better day than Derek. Derek had a monster day. We'll talk about that in a couple minutes, but like Baker had a great day. Right? You're talking about teams with playmakers at wide receiver. You're talking about teams with good defenses, with defensive head coaches who are basically identical. The only difference is Todd Bowles has gotten 2 playoff appearances based on tiebreakers. So, like, that was the thing. It was like, if you're going to tell me that Tampa has a chance to be sneaky good, don't tell me that the Saints don't have a chance to be sneaky good, because they're the same team, right? You got these veteran players with a lot of young up-and-coming players, quarterbacks that you feel like, are underrated, or at least I feel like are underrated. And we'll go. But the Bucks took down the Commanders. Not a good day for the rookies.
Right.
The Bears actually won.
Although I guess Jaden Daniels' legs look better than his arm. Or I actually didn't see the game, so I don't know if he had, timing issues with receivers or what.
Yeah, it was a strong day for my take that rookie quarterbacks are going to struggle. I don't care who you are. Like, Caleb Williams looked awful. He had a clip earlier in camp where he was telling Torrey Taylor, "He's like, don't worry, you're not going to be punting that much." I think he punted 6 times in that game.
Although I did surprisingly, I know he's been banged up a little bit, but Keenan Allen had a terrible drop for his quarterback. I was like, come on, dude.
Yeah, Bears are going to bear. But no, so let's get back to Alontae Taylor. 3 sacks. He led the team in tackles. He had 3 TFLs. He had a great pass defense. The first DB in Saints history to have 3 sacks in a game. And it's funny, when he came, when he talked to the media, he said he was asked, what does it feel like to be the first defensive back in Saints history to have 3 sacks? And he was like, "Oh, they told me that coming off the field." And I just thought it's funny, because when he says they, I'm they. Because when I talked to him on the field coming off the game, I was like, I asked him that question, and he was like, "Wait, what?" And so here's that clip. There's going to be an Audacy stinger at the top because I can't not play it. But here's that interview on the field. All right, here with Alontae Taylor. Just getting congratulated. Alontae, they've been playing football here a long time. You're the first defensive back in Saints history with 3 sacks in a game. What does that mean to you when you hear something like that?
I ain't even know. Man, that's crazy. You just told me that. I don't know, man. I give all glory to God first. My main mission this season, man, is one play at a time, one series at a time. And, I did that. The guys around me, we all did our job, and that's what allowed the sacks to come. So just super excited for the team. Way to start the season.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people with a lot of ideas, a lot of opinions about how this team should be run, what this team is capable of. 47-10 in the season opener. What's the statement you guys made today?
Man, I don't think we were surprised as a team. We feel like, if we can outlast anybody, and as long as we keep hustling, we play New Orleans Saints defense and offense, I think we'll take care of business like this week to week. But, we got to get to the drawing boards. Not everything was perfect. We got to get ready to go play a good team out there in Dallas.
Gotcha. You got all those renovations in the locker room. How hot are the vibes going to be Club Dub today?
Hey, we were looking forward to this. Normally we had the old locker room with the smoke and the music. I can't wait to get in there and see what that thing look like.
All right, man. I appreciate it. Congratulations.
He was definitely most excited about Club Dub.
He kind of sounded like I hate that. He kind of sounded like Channing Tatum. It was like, "Oh, I've been waiting for this. I'm about to make a name for myself here." But if you haven't seen Deadpool and Wolverine, you don't get that reference. There was actually a bedazzled.
I've seen the meme so much now, or the GIF, whatever.
Yeah, I'm sure you've seen it, right? There was actually a bedazzled Wolverine cowl in the dome, which I was like, have you always had that, or did you just make that because that's now in the no,
we got funky creative fans for sure. So
I mean, it was exciting, and we're going to talk more about the dome atmosphere. That was like a flashback game. Like I had to ask the people on the sideline, like, "Am I in the right place? Is this right? Is this the Dennis Allen era Superdome? What is this? Why are people so excited?"
Winning is fun.
No, it was funny because in the locker room after the game, Jawan Johnson was kind of like, man, it must have been a while since we've scored 47 points in a game, right? Like he genuinely, he was not joking. And I was just like, Jawan, funny story. This is actually the second consecutive regular season game where the Saints have scored 47 points. A real statistic that exists. Over the Saints' last 2 games, the Derek Carr-led Saints have averaged 47.5 points of offense.
And against NFC South rivals. What do you know?
NFC South opponents. And this is the offense that everyone's telling you is the worst in the NFL. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. But no, really cool day for Alontae Taylor. And, he was kind of talking about, like, I didn't even know they were going to blitz me the way they did. Like, when they shifted me to nickel, I knew I was going to get more opportunities. I thought Dennis Allen's answer, he was asked, like, okay, what does Alontae do that makes him so effective in those blitzing situations? This is what DA said when in answering that question.
That'd be number one, right? Yeah, look, and he's aggressive. See, it's one thing to say that you're going to send somebody on a pressure, all right? But they got to be willing to go in and deal with the noise that's in there. Every now and then it gets a little noisy, and there's big 300-pound offensive linemen and things of that nature. So I think he's fast, he's aggressive, and so it was good to see him be able to run back there and was it 3 sacks? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think it's been a while since we've had a DB do that.
Never happened. That was going to be our next question.
Be a long time, right? Since the 60s.
Yeah, it's been a long time because it never actually happened. I was surprised they didn't announce that in the Dome, or maybe they did and I didn't see it because clearly Alontae didn't know and DA didn't know. But very cool moment. Alontae's a guy who
love that
work. Good.
You got to love that with Alontae too, just because of the switch to being the nickel guy from outside, not necessarily was on the top of his list, and just really came out and is actually vocal about that. He's like, it's not what I want to do, but it's kind of where the coaches have me, and then that's where they see me doing. So I'm going to be the best I can at that. And that's a total team dude, obviously, right there. You need that kind of guy all over.
Yeah, and I mean, when you're an outside corner and you feel like you're an elite outside corner, and suddenly they're like, "We need you at nickel," that's a sacrifice that you're making,
right?
Because nickel corners don't get paid. At least they haven't. Like when you look at, even CJ, right? Like CJ,
yeah, that was a problem.
Wanted to get paid like a top corner or top safety, but teams are like, yeah, we're not going to pay a nickel corner top corner money or top safety money. We're going to pay you nickel corner money. And so you kind of have to, take that. You're taking one for the team when you're doing that. Because Alontae, I guarantee, if you asked him, and he has said this, he's like, I am an elite outside corner. I am getting better at the nickel. But he's committed to it. I think his approach has been really good. He's been like, his teammates, his coaches have all said like they really appreciate how he's approached this season. And you're starting to see it now. There's a long way to go, right?
Yeah.
We saw how last season ended. Alontae had a really strong game against the Packers in week 3 last year. That was where he got his first sack of his career on Jordan Love, and he hadn't had one since then. But, later in the year, it seemed like things got away from him a little bit. He got benched a couple times, and the Saints are going to have to go play that same Rams offense again. And I think that'll be the true kind of litmus test of how far he's come at the nickel position. But you got to appreciate it. Like, I think he's an easy guy to root for. He's an easy guy to talk to. Like, there's a reason since his rookie season, he's been a guy we've talked to in the locker room basically every week because he's approachable. He's a very conscientious person. Like he's conscious of his teammates and, the work that has to be done and the fact that he's improving week over week. So
he's got the Riz, as the kids would say.
I'm sorry.
He's got the Riz, as the kids would say.
Are you using that correctly? I don't know if you're using that correctly.
Yeah, charisma. I mean, he has that gravitas about him where, he's got the personality, he's got the talent. You feel the confidence. It's kind of the drip off of Alontae, as you guess you'd say.
I'll give you charisma. I'm not sure if you're saying Riz in the right context, but I do try to keep up with the lingo and and I appreciate. Yeah. So I think if I'm using it correctly, I would call the Panthers and the Falcons. They looked pretty Ohio in that game, in their games yesterday.
Oh, I guess mid is no longer cool.
No, I mean, Ohio is mid. That's like, apparently that's what people are using Ohio to say like, oh, they're mid, which I'm a fan of that. I can get on board with that. Sometimes they get it right, but no. And we'll keep going here, but very cool for Alontae. Hopefully he can continue. I feel like he's one of these guys that, like, you have a lot of veterans on this team, but he's one of these young players who, as things go forward, he's going to be one of your team leaders. Or at least I think that's what he's kind of developing into, right? Tyrann Mathieu's not going to play forever. Marshawn's not going to be here forever. Demario Davis not going to be here forever. Cam Jordan's not going to be here forever. You need people to kind of build into those roles so you can kind of hand it down, right? Tyrann Mathieu, Malcolm Jenkins is a good example of a guy who showed up as a veteran and kind of took over that role. But you really want your homegrown guys to turn into that. And I did ask Alontae Taylor that question. I thought his answer was good in terms of, when you ask people like, why don't I believe in this team? One of the answers they'll give you is they have too many old players. They have too many veteran players at key spots, and you're worried, they're going to fall off. I actually see that as a strength. I see that as a team leadership thing. And when you have that strong core of leadership, you can play above your weight. And I think that's why when people tell me this is going to be a bottom 5 team, I never really saw that, because that leadership, those veterans are going to, they give you a much higher baseline for a lot of reasons. And I thought Alontae spelled it out very well when he answered it here.
Will Harris consistently verbal like that, or was he particularly answering?
That's Will every day. I told Will on the field during practice, I was like, I got it, bro. Like you ain't got to tell me that many times. It's like, hey, I'm gonna let you know. I'm gonna make sure we're on the same page. And you get into games like this and it's loud. It felt good getting that over communication, right? Like, Alontae, make sure you do this. Like I'm right here. Like, don't do this. Like, he's over communicating, and in practice it's kind of annoying. But then in the game, like today, and first game with him, so getting comfortable with him. So I won't tell him that anymore. I'm gonna tell him, hey, talk to me as much as you need to talk to me. And so,
as kind of one of the younger players on this roster, it seems like there's a really solid mix of veteran players, young players, kind of up-and-coming players. Is that helpful? Does it feel like there's a good balance of that, where a guy like Will, who's been around for a while, can give you that kind of verbal input when you need it?
Yeah, I think what I like the most is that our veteran guys are helping the younger guys. I mean, we don't have any vets in the room, nowhere on the defense, not just the DB room, but to where they feel like they're too good to kind of help us, right? Like, understanding that this is a business, right? So if you're making more plays, then maybe it's taking plays for me. We don't have anything like that in our room. And so I love the fact that I can go to a Marshawn, right? Like, and he can help me, or Kool-Aid can go to a Marshawn, or Rico can go to Cam Jordan. We can ask questions, and the guys are going to help us out, because as a team, we're just trying to make it to the Super Bowl. And so these are the guys that are dressed out. These are the guys that could possibly get into the game. So we're just going to make sure we help each other and reach that goal.
Yeah, and I think that's an underrated element on a team. Like, that's why Tyrann Mathieu is here. Like, he's obviously here because he's a good player, but he's also here because he's a leader in that room. Cam Jordan, Demario Davis, same deal. Like, their value to this team is obviously important on the field, but it's almost equally important in that locker room, and developing young players so that when you rely on them, it's not a coincidence that the Saints have these linebackers that suddenly show up on other teams as their starting linebacker, right? Like, look at Zach Bond. Like, he's been in that room. He's been learning from these great veteran leaders, and then he goes to another roster and he's ready to be that guy himself. Caden Ellis with the Falcons is a good example. Look at Alex Anzalone with the Lions. Like, it's not a coincidence. And it's not just a matter of the Saints just misidentifying talent. It's just they develop these players in the system and then they move on. So I think that's something to be very positive about. One more stud on the defensive side before we move on. Chase Young didn't really record any stats in that game.
Ooh, man.
I think he had 2 QB hits, but man, his fingerprints were all over that thing. And that's why when you talk about defensive ends, the stats are so misleading in terms of, if all you're worried about are sacks, if all you're worried about are, okay, did he get a tackle here? You're missing the boat entirely, because, man, he made life miserable on Bryce Young and that Panthers offensive line. I kind of felt like at one point in the second half, the refs started to feel bad for the Panthers and just stopped calling penalties on him. Like, he was getting held constantly. There was one play where he just trucked a guy, put him on his back like a turtle, and the guy, instead of trying to get up, just kind of like scissored his legs up in the air and tried to like take almost like a leg tackle.
And not called, no penalty.
Nothing. It was so blatant. I mean, it was right in front of the back judge. Like, what are you looking at? And it was like, okay, guys, they're just getting boat raced here. They might quit if we go too hard on them. They might just take the ball and leave. That happened to me in a pickup basketball game once. I was on this is an aside, but it's kind of applicable. Like I remember we were playing this team that was like, I think these were college kids that were just here for for the summer, and they put a team together and didn't tell anyone. That was like, we are way too good for this league. And I was on a team of like 7 randoms, and we weren't terrible. We won a couple games, but we played these guys and we were down like 40 at halftime. And the players on my team, we had no like connection to each other. And without saying anything, 5 of these guys just left. They just walked out. And I had to go to the ref and the other team and be like, I guess the game's over. Like my team left. And we ended up just like scrimmaging each other. And I feel like that's what might have happened if the refs just continued to call these penalties. They would have been like, all right, I'm going home. But man, Chase Young, one of the reasons I felt like this defense had a chance to really impact games in a way that changes things, changes the dynamic for the Saints, is that you look at the defense over the last few years, and the missing piece to me has been, okay, you're able to get into passing situations, right? You're able to stop the run at a reasonable rate. But when you get there, you just don't seem to have that star pass rusher that can really just say, well, you're in an obvious passing situation. Good luck, right? And you look at teams, like the Rams with Aaron Donald, or at least where they were with Aaron Donald, right? The Cowboys with Micah Parsons. All these teams seem to have that star edge rusher that the Saints just didn't have. And that's why you draft them in the first round every year. And so you see Chase Young, and it's like the fear that he strikes into that tackle when he's standing over him. There was one moment where Chase Young was chasing down Bryce Young for behind. And I was seriously concerned it was kind of like in Happy Gilmore, where the guy's like running after Shooter McGavin after he steals the jacket. And you're like, man, I hope Shooter gets away, because otherwise he might die. And that's how I felt for Bryce. I felt that fear for Bryce. So I don't know. Chase Young, I'm excited. Like, he'll get those sacks. Those sacks will come. Those numbers will come. But the impact he was able to have in that game was exactly what you were hoping for.
No, and I love seeing a little glimpse of Club Dub the Saints put up post game. And man, Chase was featured living it up in Club Dub. I was like, all right, the new guy just fitting right in seamlessly.
He looks like he's carved out of granite, that dude. I mean, gosh. I don't want to sit here and talk too much about bodies, but like you put him and Jadeveon Clowney next to each other, and you have like 2 of the most like, these were just designed in a lab, these football players. Like you can't build a Madden like create a player with more ideal measurables for what an edge rusher would be than Jadeveon Clowney and Chase Young. But again, and I do want to say, like, we are going to go nuts and we're going to get excited, and you should be excited. I need this team to come out here and do it again. Right? Like, that's the one thing I worry about when you win a game the way you did, is you start to lose that edge of like, when you're a team that's getting told by everybody that you don't have it, that actually helps you. Yeah. Right? That motivates you. And when everything goes well, you have to avoid losing that edge. So hopefully you see the same team show up in Dallas with the same level of urgency in what will be a much more difficult environment to play. But as far as the defense is concerned, we went through the only duds I can think of, and they weren't very exciting. Man, so much went well.
Yeah, and going back to Alontae too, with those 3 sacks, shout out to him too for just being able to lock in and finish. Too many times you see guys, oh, you had him, but ended up getting out of your grasp or, escape somehow. But Alontae being able to take the QB down, obviously elite right there. It's a guy that finishes with his tackles. And just to see that kind of physical presence in the secondary is awesome.
Yeah, and he talked about how like he went to the defensive ends. Like he was talking about like he can go to anyone in his locker room and ask them for tips and pointers. And he went to the defensive ends and he was like, hey, I'm getting locked up here. Give me some tips. What should I do with my hands? And like they didn't like be like, get away from me. Like, what are you doing? They were like, no, do this, do this, do this. And hey, like it paid off. No, and I'm excited. I'm excited for Alontae. He also had a really nice pass breakup in the end zone on Xavier Legette,
right?
Where it was just casual. Like he played it so well, and he just went up there with one hand, just slapped it away. It was like Adebo had a couple really nice plays like that too. It's just so much to like on that defense. But let's wrap this segment up, come back and heap some praise on the offense, which it's man, it's so nice to be able to spend a week being happy about the Saints.
Like you mentioned early on, I didn't even realize when it would happen, but it was like 9 straight possessions you scored.
I mean, they probably would have gone 10 if they had left the first team offense on the field. Like they only punted because Jake Haener went in, and man, he looked a little lost. But that's it. Again, I don't want to talk about
just striking up the Rattler hive now.
Yeah. I don't want to. That's not that's the snake pit is not. We don't need to. I am interested to see what they do, because it's the problem is now you've set up a scenario where if you change the backup, you're making a statement. And in reality, it's probably more like, hey, we want to give both of these guys a chance to kind of operate as that game day backup. But that's not the conversation we need to have this week. We can have that conversation next week when everyone inevitably turns on Derek Carr again. But let's get into it. Let's get into the offense. This is Inside Black and Gold. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. We got a lot of people in here for this latest edition of #LunchPods. I think this is how we're going to do it. If anyone was wondering, like we kind of bandied about the idea of doing a live stream last night, but, it's a long day of coverage. I'd rather come on here after going through all the press conferences and having clips and having a composed episode and not just throw our noise into the cacophony of other podcasts who are all going live at the same time after the game. I feel like there's more value in coming here with a more composed episode, getting everything kind of settled.
Like you said, it's a hell of a day, dude. We got a hole at WWL Radio, and believe me, no complaints because we're covering football, for crying out loud.
Oh yeah, I'm not complaining.
We definitely needed the day to decompress a little.
I'm not complaining. I just think the quality will be
exactly
better. And also, like when I'm on the road, we can't do it on Sundays anyway.
Yeah.
So it makes more sense to just be consistent and do our post game on Monday. So that's probably what we're going to continue to do. I'm just saying this for anyone who's wondering when they should set their schedule. I think Monday, Wednesday, Friday will be the pod, where Wednesday's a live stream to break down the initial injury report. Friday's our typical preview episode. Then obviously Monday is the reaction. That's going to be our typical schedule, a 3-day a week with, maybe some emergency pods thrown in if crazy stuff happens. But that's what we're going to look at. But anyway, if you haven't subscribed yet, please do that. It's always been a long segment. It's going to be a long pod. But if there was ever going to be a long pod, it should be this one. Right. But we're going to hit the break. We're going to come back. We're going to talk more about the offense. Who dat? Stick around. And we're back on Inside Black and Gold. Didn't make you wait particularly long for that one. But I did lie, and I'll get to that in a second. I'm Jeff Nowak.
Liar!
Hit the subscribe button. We are talking Saints. I don't think I actually said the score of the game. Saints 47, Panthers 10. And that 10 is generous. It took them a 4th down scramble by Bryce Young to get 7 points on the board. But I'm not going to start with the offense. I'm going to start with the special teams, because there is a guy that we should talk about on special teams, and I'd rather talk about him at the top and then get into all the offensive topics than talk about all the offense and then talk about this guy at the very end, because you'll lose him because he's small. And that's Blake Groupie, which I'm
Groupies for Groupie.
Going to try to make Groupie Gang a thing. Like Groupie Gang. I'm a fan. I think I'm going to work on it. I'm going to get it going. That's going to be my pet project for this season, is getting the chant Groupie Gang off the ground. I need to get the Saints social media team involved. They could probably help me get that to happen. But if we can get everyone yelling Groupie Gang, Groupie Gang, Groupie Gang, I'll be happier about it. But 9 for 9. When you have a kicker that kicks the ball 9 times, and all 9 times it goes through the uprights. One of those kicks is 57 yards. Another is 52 yards. Man, it's a heck of a game. I drafted him in all my fantasy leagues, and I was happy about it. I felt like a homer while I did it. But now I feel like There are people in those leagues, especially the ones that aren't here, be like, "What the hell? Why does he have Blake Grupe?" And I'm like, "Because I like Blake Grupe. I've been a fan of Blake Grupe from the start." And I think people take for granted this dude when he kicks the ball, it is like laser straight. Like you watch some of these kickers and they'll sneak the ball inside the uprights, and it's like, oh, it counts, but man, that was stressful. Like you're using like when a kicker is forcing you to lean in your chair constantly because you feel like you need to help that kick get where it needs to go. That's a stressful kicker. With Blake, it's like he'll miss occasionally. Every kicker misses kicks. It's like it's just reality. But when he makes it, it's like just straight as an arrow. And especially when you're in a dome and you're not worried about wind, and it's like all you got to do is kick it straight, unless there's a pretty strong air conditioning unit. I mean, 50, and we're talking about like, hey, why were you so excited about Charlie Smith? Because he could go out there and kick 60 plus yarders with ease. That 57 yarder didn't look stressful, did it?
That was amazing to me. And it was like, the dude just hit a 57. And I was like, kind of everyone was just like, oh yeah, field goal was good. I'm like, he just drilled the 57 yarder for crying out loud.
This tiny man, this guy who you would never guess in your life if you saw him on the street, but like, that's a professional football player.
Right.
Like he could walk up to someone and be like, I will give you 100 guesses at what I do for a living.
Yes.
And no one would be, unless you knew the Saints, right? No one would say, you must play for an NFL football team. But no, and what impressed me about that was not just that he made the 57-yard kick, but how confident his coaches were that he could make it, because the scenario you got into, right? Will Harris intercepts the ball. You were at like the 40-yard line. Okay. The Saints run one play, they get about 6 yards. Then, or four, they get 6 yards. Then they run a toss play to Alvin Kamara that gets blown up. He loses 5 yards. So you are now at the 39-yard line. And on 3rd and 9, you decide not to be safe and run a play that should get you, a lot of times you would look at it, and I think Pete Carmichael 100% would have called the play designed to say, hey, worst case scenario, we pick up 5-6 yards and get a more reasonable field goal. And if not, and maybe he breaks a tackle, gets a first down, and you keep the chains moving. Instead, they go for it all. And Derek, it's a shot play that I think it was initially designed to go to Chris. They bracketed him, so he goes to Rashid Shaheed, and it's a great throw. The Will Smith, Michael Jackson makes. I got the wrong name, the wrong celebrity, but
yeah, exactly.
Michael Jackson makes a hell of a play to break it up, but like, and at that point I was like, man, are they really going to kick a 57-yard field goal? I thought they were going to punt it. I think DA last year would have punted it. I think that's been a change for him, and he's kind of learned his lesson in that regard. And I think that Packers game, where Grupe missed the game winner, or the go-ahead kick, I should say. That I think that was kind of a learning point for him, because he bypassed a 55-yard field goal attempt midway through the third quarter that would have really made that a much more difficult comeback scenario for the Packers. In this game, it was like, no, we feel comfortable from 57, and we're going to send him out there. Like, we're not going to run a draw and try to get 3-4 yards. We're good where we are. And we can take that chance to go for it all and maybe get a touchdown, because we feel comfortable that he's going to, like, I use the analogy of golf. Like, hey, I can plug the green 3 yards from the hole for an easy birdie putt, or I can get it on there, 30 yards away. If we both make that putt, we get the same score, right? And so you can be a little more aggressive, and I appreciated that, because that's a weapon, especially when you kick so many kicks indoors. So,
well, just the whole way the scenario laid out too. You just scored on the opening drive, momentum, boom, first play, like we talked about. Bryce Young throws the pick, offense gets the ball back. Oh my God, keep that whole train rolling. It keeps on building. All right, the offense stalled a little there. You didn't get into the end zone. Fuck it, we're going for the field goal, and guess what? He still comes through in the end. So that streak of the possessions and getting points started right there, and you just felt that aggression. You loved it, the fact that it was like, all right, we are going to step on their necks and be that aggressive team. And gotta have faith in the kicker to do that. And they definitely believe that he could make that inside, no problem at all.
Yeah, and like the question for Blake is like, okay, what happens when you get a real kick. We still don't know. We still haven't seen him in a true game-winning scenario. Even that Packers kick was like a minute, some odd seconds left. So it wasn't like time expiring, make this and we win, miss this and we lose. We haven't really got that moment yet. But that's not a no pressure kick either. You're in a scenario where
it's in there somewhere. It's around.
Well, I'm just saying, like, that 57-yard kick, it's at a point in the game where you're not blowing them out. You're up 7-0, and you have all the momentum, and you make that kick, and you continue to have that momentum. You miss that kick, and you hand the Panthers the ball at their own 40-yard line.
Little air comes out the balloon, right?
Right, and then they go down the field and score a touchdown. That feels like a different game. Instead, you're up 10-0, and that's a swing. So there was a lot of questions about Blake going into this season. I think there was a real competition with Charlie Smith. Blake won it, in my opinion, clean. And I think
that night at Tulane, though, when obviously Charlie Smith boomed one, kind of like all of a sudden everybody like, wait a minute.
Yeah. I think a lot of people, if they were cutting the Saints roster down and they had to do it that night, Charlie Smith would have been your kicker. And I kind of at that time was like, guys, pump the brakes.
Right, and credit DA made it a clear point right away. He's like, I don't care about the distance there. I need someone that's reliable 50 in.
Well, you care about the distance, but that's not what you're going to make that decision on. You make that decision because you trust that not only can your guy make a 57-yarder, which is a career long, he can also go 9 for 9 overall, including 5 for 5 on extra points. And he went 40 for 40 on extra points last season. That's not nothing. Those are 33-yard kicks. That's not a gimme. That's not a a 2-foot putt anymore. That's kind of like a 10-foot putt.
What's the rundown on the kicks? You have them again, all the distances, 57,
52, 42, and 39. The interesting thing is that Brandon Aubrey also went 4 for 4 on his kicks, the guy the Saints are going to face in Dallas. And I added up his distance. He also had a 57-yarder. He had 4 kicks because the combined distance of them was 193 yards, not including the extra points.
Yeah.
Blake's 4 kicks combined for a distance of 192 yards. So it's very, very close to kind of, I don't know, it's a stupid statistic that means nothing, but I appreciate it. Okay. We're done with the groupie gang. Now, man, my car, when I woke up yesterday morning, I had the battery was dead. I had to go, thankfully I have a portable jump starter, and I put it on the hood and I put the connections on and I started the car. I needed a little extra juice, but it got me where I needed to go. Klint Kubiak's car did not need any extra juice. He came in with all the juice.
Kubiak is the juice.
I mean, this is a guy who, if the Saints go 3 and out on their opening possession, I am fairly certain you would have heard boos in that building. I didn't hear it, but I was told that there were people booing during his introduction for that game.
Oh, give me a fucking break.
I agree. But
that's not a real fan then. That's trash.
I don't know. We don't need to talk about it because Derek made that conversation go away with his third pass attempt in the first 2 screens, right? That throw to Shaheed, that set the tone for the entire, not just the game. That decision by Klint, that throw by Derek set the tone for the season to this point. Yeah. Now that can change, right? Like if Derek goes out there and lays an absolute dud against Dallas, all this goodwill will go away immediately and we'll be back where we started. So he's definitely not out of the woods yet. But man, the decision to throw that ball on a 3rd and 6 where, again, you could just call a chain moving play. No, we're going for it all. And it's kind of a layered concept. It's based on what the safety does. Jawan is coming underneath. If that safety stays over the top on Shaheed, the ball goes to Jawan. If the safety crashes down on Jawan, which is what happened, the ball goes to Rashid over the top. And man, there is not a player on this team and a route on this team I feel more confident in than Rashid Shaheed one-on-one with a corner with no safety over the top going to the post. I've seen him do that so many times at this point. It's crazy. He did it as a rookie against the Cardinals. Taysom Hill threw the damn ball. He did it against the Colts in that for a touchdown in that game. He did it against, I want to say the Jaguars. I can't remember. He had at least one more touchdown on a play like that. And he's just, he's a difference maker. I don't want to compare a guy to Tyreek Hill, but that's that type of speed. That's that type of impact. I asked Juwan Johnson after the game, I was like, Do you think this duo, this Olave Rashid duo, gets slept on? And he was like, absolutely. Like, and the reason is they don't make it about themselves. Like, they're more than happy to be under the radar guys. We'll talk about Chris a little bit more in terms of like, this guy got 2 catches in that game. He was not a focal point of the passing game because he was getting bracketed. He's still out there blocking on Jamal Williams' touchdown run in the fourth quarter. Jamal doesn't get into the end zone unless Chris is out there throwing a good block downfield. So
Good point with that one.
I'm a big fan of both these guys. I have been. I will continue to be. But Derek, 19 of 23. That's 82.6%. 200 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, not even really any. Like, a lot of times you'll say, oh, he didn't throw an interception, but, oh, well, this guy should have had one. He dropped it.
Right. Shoulda, coulda, woulda. Right.
I don't think you could even point to a pass in that game and say there was a at-risk interception. Maybe the throw to Foster in the end zone, which I'm fairly certain was a play designed to go to Landon Young. And I have a clip that proves that. But, like, 2 of the incompletions. He had 4 incompletions on the day. 2 of them. One was a deep ball to Shaheed that we talked about that right. Mike Jackson made a nice play on, but it was dropped in a bucket. I don't think you can throw it any better. It was the same route that Shaheed scored a touchdown on against the Titans in week 1 of last year. So I think the Panthers had that scouted a little bit better, and they played it well. And so the DB made a nice play and broke it up. Still a great pass. Like, you look at, I tweeted a picture. I tweeted screen grabs of both of these, and the ball is like getting into a bucket, and the DB just gets his hand over the top and knocks it away. It was a great play by him. Next drive, another Derek Carr incompletion was the one to Taysom Hill in the back corner of the end zone that Taysom goes up, gets 2 hands on it, and again, the DB gets his arm in and knocks it away. But a great play by him, but also just a dime throw. So, I mean, if those 2 passes get completed, this day is insane. We're talking about a Drew Brees versus the Colts type day of like a 90 some odd completion percentage. If you remember that game, I was talking to someone on the sideline and I was like, when's the last time the Saints dominated a game this thoroughly? And that was the answer I had, was Drew Brees set a record in that game for completion percentage. It was his first game back after the thumb injury. Maybe the second. I think it might have been the second game back. Either way, he set a record for touchdown passes in that game. I think Traquan Smith caught it. I can't recall. But he actually said it twice in that game because the first time he threw it, it got called back. That was the type of day that Derek Carr had. It was
I love to see definitely the accuracy was there. His timing was there. You didn't feel like he was holding on to the ball ever. You were like, throw the damn thing, which was maybe something critical you've been in the past of him. But yeah, this game, the Carr was, he got the jumper cables on the battery before the game for sure too.
He left the jumper cables at home. He came with the juice.
Right.
But I do want to talk about, so that touchdown to Foster Moreau was interesting, and it was kind of some funny moments in the post-game press conferences. Derek was asked why he didn't run it in, because he probably could have, and the play got extended. This is what he had to say. I thought it was a funny quote.
I like to run the ball, but that criticism did already come for you on social media.
It did.
You didn't just take the rushing touchdown. Why did you decide to throw it?
Because Foster waved his hand. Anytime a receiver waves his hand as a quarterback's running this way and they wave their hand in the middle of the field, we just feel like we have to throw it. It's like a bug to one of those zapping lights. I don't know what it is. I was about to run it because to be honest with you, he wasn't even in the read. And so I was about to take off and just go in, but Foster waved his hand, so I have to throw it.
Derek, what was the design on that play? Like, was Landon Young an option for that? I mean, what was the...
Landon caught a touchdown in practice. Yeah, and so it sounds funny, but I mean, everyone that could have been a fun one to talk about too. Getting Landon involved in the pass game. But Landon was a for sure viable option. But yeah, I won't get too much into the read and scheme, but
beautiful analogy by Carr there.
It's like a bug zapper.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. We put your hand out though. I got to throw it to him.
He also said on Juwan's touchdown, he didn't see him right away, and then he heard Foster from the sideline yelling "post, post," and he's like, "Oh yeah," and he threw it. He was like, "I got to give Foster credit for everything." Foster did leave with that head injury, which I don't think is a big deal, but no, it's funny. And Deuce was talking about this on the broadcast. That's why I kind of was alerted to it, and I talked to Landon in the locker room, and I was like, "Was that was that play designed to go to you? And he was like, well, I wouldn't say it was designed to go to me, but it's definitely an option. And like Derek said, he caught a touchdown on that play in practice. So like, I think Foster Landon got a little hung up. I think his job there is to, if there's a rusher, I think he has to take him. But if there's no rusher, he's just leaks out into the backside and you'll see him throw the ball across the field. And I think that's what Carr was waiting for initially, but Landon just never got out of the wash. I have a feeling they're going to go back to that at some point. So if you're in the red zone and you see Landon come on the field, because it's not scoutable right now because they didn't run it that way. But if you see Landon come on the field in the jumbo in the red zone, the low red zone like that, be on alert. I think they're trying to get Landon Young a touchdown at some point this year. And moving on from Derek, again, just a great day from Derek. But Klint Kubiak as a play caller, one thing I appreciate about him, and Alvin talked about this, is he wants to get you a touchdown, right? Like if he feels like you've earned a touchdown, he's the type of play caller that's going to be like, no, we're going to get it for you. And it's the type of thing that like, it's subtle, but it's like, I don't think the Jamal Williams touchdown situation happens last year if Klint is the OC, because if the entire offense came over and said, we want to get Jamal a touchdown, he'd have been like, let's fucking do it. Right. And that's what he did for Alvin. When Alvin had that touchdown run and he got it called back because Fuaga had a kind of a ticky-tack holding penalty. It was like, all right, don't worry, we're going to get you that touchdown. And I thought Alvin had a really fun quote. There's a lot of fun quotes in this game. Crazy what happens when you win by 37 on Taysom kind of vulturing his touchdowns. And here you go.
At one point they got called back and the offense just kind of kept going back to you. Does that mean something to you, like in a moment like that where they keep going back?
Yeah. I mean, Klint said it. He like, man, I'm going to give it to you. I don't care. And I told him, I'm like, man, I told him, I was telling Jawan and Taysom on the sideline, I'm like, sometimes you might get down there and then, like, for instance, like, I know people always talk about, like, oh, Taysom steals your touchdowns or something, right? And I'm like, in those moments, you'd be like, dang, I wish I got it. But today, Klint went back to me. I'm like, damn, get that shit to somebody else. But I mean, obviously I got the win for it, and then Klint got the belief, and then the O-line and everybody just executed. So I was able to get in there. But it's dope when you got a play caller that trusts in you and believe in you, and just got to go in there and make a play.
Do your teammates say that, or do like fantasy players tweet that at you?
It's just not just Taysom, but Taysom obviously he get a lot of run down there on the goal line and stuff. But really, teammates say like, man, Taysom stole your touchdown again. I'm like, and then he'll come to me and be like, I'm sorry, AK. I'm like, bro, what are you apologizing to me for? But
I just love the image of Taysom going over and apologizing to Alvin for stealing his touchdown. And I would bet money when this happened was Minnesota. Christmas Day. Alvin has 6 touchdowns.
Yes.
NFL record 6 touchdowns, and they give the 7th one to Taysom.
Right, you were kind of mad, like, Sean, what are you doing?
Right, because like he tied the NFL record with 6. 7, he would have been on a line all by himself. But there's a lot more I want to talk about. Alvin had some really nice quotes about like why he wants to be here and that. I think maybe we push that onto the next episode. And get into it because I do want to talk more about the run game. Jamal Williams, I thought had a really solid game. Like his yards per carry wasn't fantastic. It was 3.5, but I just think you watch that game and you watch the way he ran and the hard yards he was able to get. That's what I need out of Jamal Williams. I need a guy that if it's 3rd and short, I know what I'm going to do. And I know that they can't stop him because he's going to run through a brick wall regardless of what's in front of him. And that's why it's cool when you see him get that touchdown. He earned it, as opposed to the other one he got. But one of the reasons the run game worked so well, offensive line. And there's going to be more difficult tests on the agenda for Trevor Penning and Taliesin Fuaga. Like, that was the first hurdle. It wasn't that high off the ground, but they did get over it, right? And that's all you could hope for. Build confidence. 2 young players who... if they struggled in this game, maybe you go into Dallas and you feel like, oh gosh, what are we going to do? Do we have to scheme up all these different ways to just hide them? And I don't think you necessarily do. I was actually stunned to see how often they left Trevor on an island with Clowney. Like didn't see him constantly having a tight end lined up over him. And I don't know, like I feel like Trevor's funny because I feel like people want Trevor to be good. Like, I don't know how, like, if you've ever talked to him, if you ever heard him, like, he's just a very genuine, like, like, I don't want to suck. Like, I want to be better. I'm going to do the work. You got to be good to play. And right now I'm not good enough. That's what he said last year. And I think he's building confidence. And, I asked Cesar Ruiz in the locker room kind of what he's seen out of him. He lines up next to him on every play. And this is what he said.
Yeah, it's just, it's getting everything rolling. It was just great, too. We were put in great positions, too. The defense just made big plays back to back to back. We was in great position and capitalized off of, every turnover they got for us or every time we changed the field. So it's just a great feeling, to capitalize off of, what they did for us.
Obviously, you play right next to Trevor. A lot of talk about Trevor in this spot. Have you seen a guy that's been gaining confidence? It seems like a much more confident player right now than he was.
Yeah, I see a guy that's worked his tail off, man. I see a guy that's worked his tail off, and he continues to improve every single day. So extremely proud of him and proud of the entire offensive line and running backs, defense. Proud of everybody, man. It's a great win for us today.
Yeah, and I think I agree with that. Like he's been working so hard, and you see it. It hasn't always manifested. I think you're starting to see him kind of find his way. That said, he could line up against Micah Parsons next week and get steamrolled, and we're right back to square one. You got to start somewhere. And I thought, was he great in pass protection? No. Was he good enough? Absolutely. I thought he was an asset in the run game. You saw him get out and lay some really nice blocks. He did have one hold, which wasn't really pass protection. It was a kind of a run play that he got lost on. But between him and Fuaga, I feel great about where things are in terms of, I was very stressed going in. Now I feel a little better about it. Fuaga even said like having Derek out there is like having another dad on the field, which I thought that's an interesting way to describe it. But I do think that matters, is having that veteran quarterback that can settle everybody down, particularly those young players. There's value in that. And I think it did help, certainly helped Fuaga, and I think it's helped Penning a little bit as well.
One of the benefits of the press box, obviously being on the roof in the Superdome, is it really is a fantastic vantage point for watching, plays develop or just seeing, play on the line even. And just early on, I was smiling, just obviously the way the direction the game was going, but the running lanes that were opened up by the offensive line as a whole, there seemed to be a lot of room for the run game. And we saw that obviously with backs averaging 4.6 a carry yesterday. I forget the exact total.
I think it was like 5.5 actually.
Oh wow, okay. I'm shortchanging him too much then.
Yeah, well, Taysom averaged like 9 or so. Like Taysom helped.
4.9. I looked it up real quick. 4.9.
It was 4.9.
Yeah.
But no, it's so much easier to run the ball so much easier to run offense when you can run the ball, and that's what you saw. Like, once they were able to establish the run and get things moving, everything felt easy. And we'll see. And here's the thing: like we've seen games like this before, right? And in the Dennis Allen era, which is kind of crazy to think about, but it hasn't always. I'd say it never actually has resulted in sustained success. So hopefully that's different this time around, right? It's funny because one of those games was against the Raiders and Derek Carr. One of Dennis Allen's best moments as a Saints head coach was one of Derek Carr's worst moments as an NFL quarterback, right? In terms of that shutout of the Raiders in 2022, Andy Dalton was the quarterback for the Saints.
What was the Darren Waller game though? Because that was not pretty.
Darren Waller was 2020. That was Drew Brees' final season. 2021 was Sean's final season. They didn't play the Raiders that year. 2022 was DA's first season as a head coach. Jameis started the year as the quarterback. By the time he got to the Raiders, I believe that was the first game after announcing Andy Dalton was the new starter.
Ugh.
And that's why it was an important game because Andy came out and played well, and the Saints
Andy had an incompletion yesterday, just one pass, one incompletion, and still had a better QB rating than Bryce. Oof.
Speaking of Andy Dalton,
yes,
he was there. But no, last year against the Patriots, right? Was it 35-0? You shut him out. And then you came out the next week and struggled against the Texans, lost the game, lost to the Jaguars. So it's not a guarantee. Past results do not indicate future success. Is that the stockbroker term?
Yeah.
But that's what we've seen. That's why when I say like, hey, this is exciting, you can't allow that to become we can't allow that to kind of dull your edge going forward, and hopefully they've learned from that. Because I felt very similarly to as I do now, coming back from New England, and that everything went right that day. The defense was incredible. The offense moved the ball, although I wouldn't say that it was as good as it was yesterday. So we'll see, right? I'm hopeful that they can buck that trend, and I think that they're in a good position to continue. Even if they lose that game, I'd like to see them be competitive in that environment, so that when they come home and face the Eagles, one way or the other, I don't feel like, man, we are in serious trouble. But either way, that one more guy on the offense that I want to mention, just because it's like, how do you not mention him? Rashid Shaheed is a weapon in so many different ways. Peyton Turner had a great tackle on his kick return, because he probably ends up in the end zone if Peyton can get the heck out of the way. But the two kick returns that they think they went for like 9 and 5 yards. Like, don't overlook that. Like, Johnny Hekker is a great kicker in terms of stealing yardage from you. And he had 2 kicks that he kicked these kind of like wobblers that were intended to roll. And Shaheed comes up and fields them on the first bounce. So he ends up getting positive yardage. Now it's going to go in the book as like a 5 to 8 yard return. But you also have to factor in, like, if he doesn't field that and it rolls for another 15, 20 yards. Right. So that's saved yardage that doesn't really factor in to the stat book. And it's also like, if he tries to field that and screws up, you're talking about a potential turnover. So like, those are huge plays in a game that kind of get overlooked because it's like, all right, new possession, whatever. I went to the bathroom during the punt. What happened? And you just can't when you have a return ace that you entrust implicitly like that. And then also that return ace is a weapon, like a true weapon in the passing game. That's like a roster number cheat code. That's like, you only get 48 players, and when you don't have to have a special teams ace that is kind of a lost position on offense, makes things a lot easier in terms of making sure you have enough players. So he's a weapon in so many ways, and it's easy to overlook it, I think, when he's able to do stuff like that.
No, and everybody, loves to say all the time, speed kills and you can't teach speed. Well, that's Shaheed for sure. And just the moves he's able to, to make. And I think it might've been last year where the Saints talked about how just, his route tree has been expanding in the offense at wide receiver. Like you mentioned, just offense and the special teams contribution from him being so high with a player like that is pretty awesome. And yeah, you don't want to say Tyreek Hill, but it's Tyreek Hill-esque, I guess you could say.
No, and that's, again, I've said this a few times. I think I might have said it on the pregame show. I can't remember. But no, when I compare this Saints offense to another offense, everyone wants to look at San Francisco. I don't look at San Francisco. Obviously, there's similar, tenets to it. There's similar elements. But I look at Miami. I look at Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, and I say, why can't the Saints do the same type of stuff that they're doing? And the answer is they absolutely can. And I think they will. Now, I still think if we were looking for a negative in the offensive part of the equation, I still didn't see as much yak as I want to see. Obviously, that Shaheed touchdown, there was some good yak there. But we didn't see, there was a couple plays with some Shaheed yak. I want to see some Olave yak. Some yak Olave, if you will.
It was not an Olave game, and that happens.
No, and the fact that he stays engaged, despite that, is such a positive thing, right? Because you see receivers, I think Odell Beckham was a good example. Like, if you weren't throwing the ball to Odell, he's going to sulk, right? And that's kind of that prima donna wide receiver thing. And it's like, the reason you're able to throw the ball to Shaheed on these plays is because Chris is taking all the attention over here. At a certain point, teams are going to adjust and start rolling more coverage to the other guy, and you kind of leave Olave, and his days will come. He's going to have big days, but it's a lot easier to be happy about it when you're winning 47-10.
Right.
If you're losing and then you're still not getting the targets, then you're probably going to get annoyed. But we'll see.
No, and the way that the ball was spread around too, it's like everyone's going to get their turn to eat, as you know they used to say with the Sean Payton, Drew Brees days, with that much distribution, and that was impressive to me too. You weren't leaning on just one guy in that offense, obviously.
No, and the fact that you can win a game like that without peppering Sheed with targets is so.
And Carr had 200 yards, 3 touchdowns, 200 yards, not fantastic, but effective, efficient, and what he needed to do that game. It was really, good times. Happy to see stuff.
Yeah, I mean, when you have that many short fields, it's hard to have a gaudy passing yardage number, right? Like the 300, 400, 500 yard passing games, those don't happen in blowout wins. Those happen in like high scoring losses. Like Derek had, he had, I think at one point he had the most 300 yard passing yards in the NFL last year. I don't know if he finished that way, but like midway through the season, he was leading the NFL in 300 yard passing games. That's not like a patently good statistic, right? Because that means you're constantly trying to throw yourself back into a game. We don't have to talk about garbage time yards when you're winning the entire way.
Yes. Nice. Yeah.
But all right. That's the offense. We probably didn't hit everything, but we hit a lot. We hit as much.
Real quick, shout out for actually seeing something from a guy that's gotten a lot of criticism too, and Isaiah Foskey contributing on special teams. I know it's not where you drafted him exactly of what to do, obviously, on this team. We haven't seen much of him defensively, but at least he made a couple tackles on special teams. And I was like, all right, Isaiah Foskey at least showing up.
Yeah, I don't think that's gonna absolve his struggles in anyone's eyes, but it is the reason you are willing to keep him around confidently. Like when you're a player that's struggling in the defense in the preseason, and you're the fifth string you're the fifth string defensive end, you have to be a quality special teams player. Zach Bond was the same way, right? Like even if you're not getting on the field, knowing that you're going to contribute in the area of the game that you're going to get on the field anyway, that's going to save you a roster spot. Now, like that's what I think people ignore so much of the time when they're talking about projecting the roster. It's like even if he was being elite at the defensive end spot, if he struggled, if he was not doing the work as a special teams player, you're more likely to get cut that way than you are if you're not getting the job done in the defense and starring on special teams. And I thought he had some really nice moments on special teams. Juwan Johnson, block punt. Funny note about that. He was not supposed to be on the field. Willie Gay went out with an injury, and Juwan they were like, we need somebody to go out there in the punt block. And he said like they have like 16 different punt block plays, and he did not know all of them. Like but he did know the one they called, and he went out there and he was like, all right, let's see what I got. And, I think he's probably earned himself some more punt block reps. I don't know. But yeah, so many things happened in this game that like that block punt, I had completely forgotten about until just now. Even when he was asked about it in the locker room, I was like, oh, that's right. He did block a punt. So yeah, Juwan Johnson.
Hopefully this entire feeling is contagious and everyone just keeps rolling with it, man. Cause talking about winning is fun. Just the whole vibe today is fun. And, obviously the big test coming up when we're not overlooking that at all, but hell, 1-0 is great. Let's celebrate it for sure.
No question. We got a lot of people in here. We got about 200 people in here right now, which is a big number. In the middle of the day, which is, I'm always amazed how many people are hanging out this time of day, but hey, this is when we can do it. So if this works for everybody else, great. Fantastic. Kismet. But this is Inside Black and Gold. I'm Jeff Nowak. He is Steve Geller. We're going to come back, do a quick mailbag. We've been on here for a while already, so we're not going to drag it out too long. But got a lot of questions in there, got a lot of comments. Going to take a bit of a longer break this time. Star as many of these questions as possible. Get to as many as we can. Thanks, as always, for everyone who's hanging out. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do that. If you go on Apple Podcasts and do stuff on there, make sure to leave us a rating and a review. It does help. We haven't gotten a lot of ratings in a while. I don't know what's happening. Everyone's feels like we've been rated enough. I don't know, but even if they're the only request is if you don't have to give us a 5-star rating.
Right now, you're going to get a bunch of people going 1 star. You guys suck.
You can give us 1 star all you want, and I'm not going to begrudge you that. All I ask is that if you're going to give us something other than a 5-star rating, tell me why, because that's the point. Like a 3-star rating with no explanation.
If you get a 5-star, you don't want any explanation why you got the 5.
I mean, that just means you're happy. And like, I don't need the praise. The point of the reviews is, the feedback, right?
Constructive
Like I want the
criticism. I got
feedback.
you.
Now, if you want to give me a 5-star rating and then tell me I suck at the same time, fine. It doesn't have to. I don't need positive feedback, but I do want to know what I'm doing wrong if I've pissed you off. So there's that. Anyway, this is YouTube though, so if you haven't subscribed here, do that. Otherwise, we will be right back inside Black and Gold. Who dat? Stick around. And we're back on Inside Black and Gold. This is a mailbag edition. We got a lot of comments in here, so we'll go through a good number of them quickly. First, Chris P asks why I'm making that face. I don't know. I wasn't paying attention to the comments when you asked. It's just my face. I don't know. Sometimes I make faces. It's what I do. But Jules DuPont says Carr puns need to pump the brakes. I see what you did there. Also, I disagree. I think negative Carr puns need to pump the brakes. I'm tired of hearing the same bad jokes.
The used car. You got a lemon.
Oh, he's a lemon. Or
Yeah.
That's what I'm tired of. Let's get creative and come up with some positive Carr puns. That was my
I
goal.
did see someone calling Carr here a Camry, and there's nothing wrong with that. They're reliable.
Yes, is Will Hildebrand.
Okay.
He says, our car is a Toyota Camry, which I know you appreciate, Steve, because you drive like a 1994 Toyota Camry.
Yep,
It's like the oldest car I've ever seen that runs. He says, there's nothing wrong with that. Tough, dependable, and good enough. They get you where you need to go. They're not gonna. No one's gonna take a set. Gonna do a spit take, being like, "Wow, did you see that?" But they run forever, and you get some resale value out of them for sure. But yeah, no, I agree. The Carr puns are a little overused, but again, we get so many negative ones. I think I need to balance the deck out at some point. KD, wow, this is stunning. He says, "Okay, Carr got a chuckle out of me." I think he was talking about the bug zapper line.
Yeah, that's
He's starting
great.
to grow on me. I hope he keeps playing good. And and that's the thing. Like, I feel like everyone decided so early on that they just hate this guy. Like, he's irredeemable, and he can't possibly play well enough to like him. So we're just gonna quit on him and wait for something to change. And I don't know. I think that he's a good enough quarterback to complement a good an elite defense, which I think the Saints have, and win a good number of football games. And guys, like I get that there's this idea that, oh, you're mediocre, just going to the playoffs and seeing what happens is not what successful teams do. I disagree with that. Like I think saying like, oh, winning 9 games and getting to the postseason can't be fun, that's bullshit. There's so many fan bases out there that would love nothing more than a 9-win season to get to the playoffs. Like, guys, I need you to understand, at a certain point, you just got to get there and see what happens. Right. Because, again, I grew up a Giants fan. You know how miserable I was so many of the years that I watched the Giants play? But you know how much fun I had the 2 years they went and beat the Patriots and years they had no business beating the Patriots? That's the most excited you could be. Because there's no expectations. It's all gravy. And you're just, by the end of it, you're just like, stop, there's too much. I can't take anymore. And it's like, I think the Saints fans should be there right now. Like, we've hit the bottom of I feel like you've gotten to the point, you're at that kind of low point where it's like, okay, you can either really fall to the bottom or you could, I don't know, surprise some people. And I think you should be excited about that. Either way, that's not what this comment is about. It's but no, I do think that there's a reality where we can start to get behind the quarterback of the Saints again. And obviously if he comes back in week 2 and week 3 and plays, like I don't know, come up with your Carr pun. I'm not going to give you any more. Then yeah, we can get mad again. But I'd like to think that if we continue, and here's the thing, like you could say, oh, that's a one-off. You go back to last season, and I mean the last month plus of the season, he was elite. And then you start the season like this.
Right. It's like, okay, we saw the carryover now from year 1 to year 2 on a positive note. So it's like you should be feeling good about the quarterback. There's no reason to bash Carr, right?
Not right now. No, for sure. Not right now. And there will be reason to criticize a guy. There's always reason to criticize a guy. But I think a lot of it was like, hey, yeah, I watched what happened at the end of last season, but I don't believe it. I don't believe that he's going to come into this season and show anything that indicates, hey, maybe he can carry this over. Well, I mean, I think you at least have some reason for optimism in that regard. And I'm excited about it. Like I don't like talking about a team that everyone's miserable about,
Well, getting on to do our jobs then gets a little miserable too. It's like, crap, we got to talk about this again.
This stream has been a lot more fun than
absolutely.
It would have been otherwise. Rich Rising says, we not getting no national props for that ass whipping. And I haven't really been paying that much attention. I've been really like hyper focused locally, but I'm sure that's the case. I'm sure that no one's willing to say I was wrong yet. Sorry.
I was like, Kay Adams gives the Saints love though.
Kay Adams, I don't know why she loves the Saints so much, but she does.
She does. She loves the city too, I know. So it's got to be a combination.
Yeah, and she likes Derek Carr. I think that's kind of where it is. It's like Derek Carr and Daniel Jones have become like the laughing stock of the NFL. And the difference is Daniel Jones deserves it. Daniel Jones is awful. And he was the number 6 pick in the draft, and the Giants, they're stuck with him. They paid him. They shouldn't have paid him. These are not the same. Like this idea that these are the same guy is not true. And I think you can win with Derek Carr. I don't think you can win with Daniel Jones. And I think there's a difference.
More and more, Carr's contract looks like a deal off the used car lot, if you would say.
Can't help yourself, can you? Hey, look who we got. We got look who it is. It's Tony from Australia.
Oh, g'day, mate.
G'day, mate. He's listening from Melbourne. He says, "Who dat? What a sensational win by the Saints. Now to whoop those stinking Cowgirls next round. What time is it in Melbourne? Let's see.
Time conversion.
It is 6 a.m. This man is listening to this podcast. When he left his comment was, 90 minutes ago. So
I wonder what a good Australian breakfast is.
So I don't know, but I imagine there's a kangaroo involved. That's, I appreciate you, Tony. Thanks for hanging out. KD says, I loved every second of Carr talking shit. When you walk, you could talk it. No, like that's the fun thing. Like, it's so funny because there was a point last year where that's a clip that if it got circulated, it would have been like, who does this guy think he is? Like there was a moment where Carr threw a touchdown pass against the Panthers, and I came off the field celebrating, and everyone was like, "Oh, look, he's acting like he just won a Super Bowl," and it's like, it's just funny because it's like, why wouldn't he be excited? He just threw a touchdown pass, but I think it's funny how quickly that narrative can change when you feel like things are going in the right direction, and suddenly Carr having an edge is a positive thing, as opposed to a reason to clown the guy. And it was funny. But again, it's like when you're dating someone, all of those quirks are cute and endearing, and then you break up and it's the most annoying thing ever. That's how it feels. Like it's that in reverse.
It's
right?
still I mean, how great. I love seeing the personality, obviously, but he's like, dude, I just threw 3 touchdowns on you.
Like, who are you talking to? And Derek did have some funny things to say. Like, if these guys like to pretend they don't hear the boos, and it's not something that resonates. And I'll be the first to tell you, they're full of shit. They heard those boos. Derek heard those boos against the Lions, and he actually referenced it in his comments. He was like, I haven't had a bad day in the Superdome other than that one time. And he was like, And he was like, and even then it was like, hey, I started playing better. And the fans were like, oh yeah, okay, this is, I like this.
What made it so contrastingly, was obviously with Taysom coming onto the field and the cheers coming on. It was like, man, this is brutal.
Well, a lot of times you don't know exactly who's getting booed, right? Like a lot of times it's like, oh, you're struggling. They're booing kind of the idea, and the offense isn't doing what they want, so they're going to yell. But you're not saying like, well, they're booing that guy. In that case, you knew exactly. There was 60,000 people in a building all telling you exactly how they felt because the scenario allowed it to be targeted. And to Derek's credit, he didn't fold. If that was me, I would have been like, okay, I would have gone nuclear like 33 times throughout the course of that season. He's a much more patient person than I am. But I appreciate how he responded to that. And kind of since that point, he's been a different quarterback. So I don't know. Maybe they did bully him into being better. It's tough to say. It's tough to say for sure. But one thing he did mention as well, and I think is completely true. Like when the fans are engaged and loud, the way that they were on Sunday, it changes the dynamic in that building so much. And I get it. If you don't like what's going on the field, and you feel like, hey, this should change. This is not what I want. You're not going to be as loud. You're not going to be as invested. But the fans are the reason that the Superdome is an advantage for the Saints. And when you see the other team having to call timeouts on third down and Bryce Young clearly not being able to hear the call in his own helmet, that changes the game for the better for the Saints. Fan impact plays are a real thing. I'll never forget the NFC Championship game. That's the loudest I've ever heard it in that building. Although yesterday my Apple Watch was warning me that if I did not get out of there within 90 minutes, I would have permanent hearing loss. It was like, oh, look at that.
Really? So that popped up on your watch. I had no idea that happened.
Yeah. It thinks I'm listening to something really loud, but
no, that's pretty amusing.
It thinks I'm standing next to a jet engine or something. But,
yeah, right.
I'll never forget that game because I remember at halftime, Jared Goff came out and he had taped over his ear holes. So he could hear the mic in his own helmet. And there was a point during that game that the building was shaking and the part of the concourse broke off and fell to the ground. And I'm like, this building is so loud that I'm worried it might collapse. And it's impossible to kind of put into to quantify how much of an advantage that gives a team. But when it is the environment that it was on Sunday, and this is a close game that you can take control of, it changes everything.
It fucks with your head.
Changes everything. And so hopefully we get more environments like that. Again, you're facing the Eagles in 2 weeks, right? That's a game that, when you say well, it's going to be a really tough to ask to go to Dallas and beat the Cowboys, beat a very good team in their house. You welcome the Eagles and suddenly you have that advantage. And that's why it used to be like a death wish to walk into the Superdome and try to win a game in a big moment. And I remember thinking, I remember when I lived up in Connecticut, the Giants had to play in the Superdome on a Monday night. And I just remember sitting there at a bar watching, thinking they don't have a chance. They're going to get run out of this building. And so hopefully it gets like that again. I hope it does. I hope we see a lot more of it. Robin Strugari, say what you want about the Panthers. They are a professional football team. A win like this is hard to come by. And right. The Panthers are a bad football team. They're still one of the 32 NFL teams. And I don't care who you're playing. If you embarrass a team like you did on Sunday.
And that it was.
It's not about well, they're just not good. It's about bad teams. If you're still sitting there saying, well, the Saints are bad too. Bad teams don't blow out other bad teams that way. Good teams blow out bad teams that way. Now, how good are the Saints? I still think they're probably middle of the pack, but I think that there's a chance that they are upper middle of the pack. I'm not going to put them in the conversation with the 49ers or the elite teams in the NFL. But I do think that the idea that they were not in the middle and it was really just a question of where they stack up in the middle was always silly because that's always been the case. And
although
I think
we'll obviously see from the 49ers tonight and what they end up looking like because I haven't got to watch the highlights from the game, but I do have Joe Burrow on a fantasy football team and PU.
Man, my fantasy, I won all three of my leagues and I didn't draft any wide receivers high, and I went with guys like Nico Collins and Jaden Reed and Rashid Shaheed, and they all delivered. The only one I drafted high was Tyreek Hill in our league, and because he's a cheat code, especially after he got arrested. I was like, bet all the overs. KD says Alontae or Lawrence Taylor.
Your NFL tied for NFL sack leader, Alontae Taylor.
Here's another one. KD, I'm not ignoring everybody else. He just has a lot of good comments. He says, if Tyreek can get arrested right before a game, I can only imagine a cop stopping Groupie. And he says, sir, I'm in a rush. I'm late for the game. I'm the Saints starting kicker. You're like, yeah, right. Hands behind your back. Probably
pretty wild scenario though in Miami for sure. I still don't understand the whole gravity of the situation.
Yeah, it's weird. It's weird, but that's not what this podcast is about. Will Hildebrand says, I'm a groupie. Good to hear. Dre Day says, little guy with a huge leg. The funny thing is, like, people are like, I don't understand how he kicks the ball so hard. When you watch him kick, appreciate that, like, so you watch a golfer, like watch a professional golfer, and how they're able to hit the ball so hard is not because they're really strong. It's the kind of pendulum effect of, like, they're able to get that club so far behind them that when they swing, they just have so much runway, and by the time the club gets to the ball, it's going insanely fast. And that's really what the secret is for Blake. Like, watch his leg. It's insane. It's like he's able to dislocate his hips almost. And the backswing of his leg is absurd. It's like up his lower back, like halfway up his back. His leg is like way back here. And that's why he's able to get that distance and that power on the ball, because he just has such a backswing. And it's really is remarkable. And I talked to Darren Rizzi about that last year, and it's like, that's when you're scouting a guy, that's a lot of it. It's like, yeah, some guys have strong legs, but the reason they can't control it is because they have to put the power into the ball, and he just does it so smoothly that's why he's able to maintain that kind of trajectory so cleanly. And that's something that you really have to watch a guy and scout a guy to understand, because not all colleges understand how to teach kicking, right? Like Cade York, he just was a guy that could kick the ball forever. But he gets to the NFL and just like, it's too erratic. Like, he doesn't have that control the way he did in college, because you're asking him to do a lot more. But anyway. All right, let's get a couple more here. No more for KD. You've had enough. Will Hildebrand says, remember when everyone was worried about the safety position way back when? 2 INTs, Honey Badger forced fumble, and he recovered it. Great game, but a real team coming up. Agreed. I lied. KD's got one more.
Though in that game too.
Sorry.
Bryce not looking so hot, man. And there was some pretty open passes he should have made and didn't.
I think we need to do a welfare check on Dez.
Yes.
He had drank the Kool-Aid pretty hard.
Lots of it.
I'm worried about him. You might have a hangover. Someone spiked it. Okay. KD says, Steve, please stop. Riz is for the ladies. It's like spitting game. Yeah, exactly. That's why when you said it, I was like, I think you're using that out of context. Now, I don't want to, like, I'm not gonna go on a limb here and say I am the arbiter of Gen Z, Gen Y, whatever it is, lingo. But I have heard Baby Gronk say it, and it's not the way you said it. So
gotcha.
Yeah, we'll go from there. Lehman Park is here.
I just found out recently, like, swag is not cool to say anymore, though.
Probably not. Oh, we got the Keeping It Real Who Dat Sports podcast. Haven't seen you guys in a while. Says, I believe Derek Carr played his best game as a New Orleans Saints quarterback. He was patient, in command, decisive with his throws, and his ball placement was excellent. Even the chief Derek Carr hater, Lehman Park, and I don't throw that title around lightly, but I do think that this person qualifies. He says, Derek Carr was an NFL quarterback, and we won. Yeah.
Facts.
Right. And again, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that Derek Carr is a top 10 QB, but I am going to tell you that Derek Carr is good enough to win with. And I am going to tell you that Kirk Cousins is not that much better than Derek Carr. Or Baker Mayfield, for that matter. That's why those QB lists were nonsense, where you put Baker Mayfield like 15 spots ahead of Derek. It was just silly. And here's my thing, and this is something that it's hard to visualize. I need to get like a whiteboard and write it down. But you know what? Like everyone wants to talk about quarterbacks, and I know we're 90 minutes in this podcast, and I'm not bringing this stupid shit up. But you know how everyone likes to talk about quarterbacks and say like, okay, like you draw a line from left to right and say this is the quality of a quarterback, and it's a straight line across the board. And so this is Derek Carr, this is Pat Mahomes, and this is this person, this is this person. In reality, when you're talking about quarterback play, it's like, you know what a Richter scale looks like? You know, like you'll get like this kind of wavy line, and sometimes it'll spike, and then sometimes it'll go low. That's really what you're talking about. Quarterbacks do not play at like this consistent static level. Sometimes Derek Carr is on a heater like he was yesterday, and he's at this kind of peak of his chart. Sometimes you get games like Minnesota, and that would be the bottom, the low point. But like it's really just the average of that. And what I will say for Derek Carr is that some quarterbacks will have these incredibly high highs and these incredibly high lows. With Derek, I think you have a guy who the baseline, like the bottom of that chart and the top of that chart aren't that far apart from each other, right? And that's where I think you can work with, because you know what to expect. Like he's not a guy who's going to turn the ball over. He's a guy you can trust to make the right decisions. Does he have the athleticism to extend plays? No, but you understand that. You don't have to worry about, okay, with this kind of volatility of, well, what if Lamar can extend this play for 25 minutes and then we can do something because guys run around and play schoolyard football? Like you don't have to worry about that variable because Derek's not doing that. But I do think that he is above replacement level, which is like, okay, pick up any quarterback off the street and throw him in there, and this is how he's going to play. And you will have points where, okay, this guy's dealing right now, and you can go punch above your weight a little bit. And so I appreciate that, and I'm glad that he kind of showed that in this game.
I'm actually loving Lehman Park, Jeff. Okay, the preseason game against the Panthers is over. It's time for the regular season next week. Hey, you got a point. I got you. There's a point there too, and I'm like, this is definitely another step up in the competition.
See, I don't look at it as the preseason. I kind of look at it like, okay, there's a reason LSU schedules Nicholls State.
Yes, exactly.
You know,
right?
Like the Saints, but that's also like, I also get annoyed. It's like, why does LSU keep scheduling USC or Florida State before Nicholls State? Like, there's a reason you call it a tune-up game, and the LSU usually gets to that tune-up game one game too late.
Well, and the LSU tune-up didn't look so crafty either.
Yeah, it didn't look good. I think there's reason to be worried about the LSU. But either way, like that's kind of like I don't think it's like a preseason game. I kind of look at it more like a cupcake game, like where you pay that team $1 million to show up and get boat raced by 70.
Yeah, because it does count, obviously.
Like the Saints are gonna have to start paying the Panthers to show up if they keep beating them like that. Oh man. Okay. J-Rock says, I didn't know Klint Kubiak was the OC for Mike Zimmer with the Vikings. The Saints may have a better chance to beat Dallas than I thought. And yeah, that is an interesting subplot that we haven't really gotten into.
Dun, dun, dun.
Klint Kubiak was Mike Zimmer's offensive coordinator when Mike Zimmer was the head coach of the Vikings. Mike Zimmer is now the defensive coordinator on Mike McCarthy's staff with the Cowboys. So there's an interesting connection. And so, yeah, I mean, if there's anyone out there who will understand what it is to play like against a Mike Zimmer defense, it's going to be a guy who went against it for an entire training camp in 2021.
And then obviously you can flip that too. If there's anyone that's going to understand Klint Kubiak's offense, it's going to be Zim.
Why'd you have to do that?
I know. I'm just saying.
All right. Chris P asks what we think about Trevor Penning, and this is where we can kind of end. I think that Trevor has done enough to continue being your right tackle. And that doesn't sound like a lot, but when you consider where we were after the game against the Cardinals, where everyone was already ready to kick him to the curb, I think
why is he still on the roster?
He deserves praise for that. He really does. And, you know, like, I don't think Trevor's a social media guy. I don't think he's necessarily reading the tweets and paying attention to all the grief that he's been getting. But he knows that there's frustration, and he understands. Like I give John Benton a lot of credit, and I'm hopeful I get to talk to John this week. I was supposed to talk to him last week, but the schedules didn't work out. I think he's done an excellent job with this offensive line. And, you know, you watch some of these other games, and we made a big deal about how the Saints offensive line was a weak point, and they could be the reason that things are terrible and whatever. you will go around and watch some of the highlights from other games across the NFL. Go watch the Ravens and their offensive line getting trucked. The Falcons got eaten alive by TJ Watt and the Steelers. Like the Bears, Caleb Williams was running for his life. The Commanders, Jaden Daniels was running for his life. Like there's a lot of bad offensive line play in the NFL. And I didn't watch a team in the Saints yesterday and feel like this is a bad offensive line group. I felt like, hey, there's growth that has to occur, but I think they're headed in the right direction. And I think they have some really, really strong pieces in Eric McCoy and Cesar Ruiz. I think that Talia Fuaga has a chance to be really, really good. He'll go through some rookie growing pains. He will. It's inevitable. And if Trevor can be a starting caliber tackle, I think you're in good shape. And then the question becomes, okay, left guard, Lucas Patrick started that game, went out with a toe injury. Landon Young actually took over. I'd be hopeful that if Lucas can't go this week, you would get Nick Saldiveri in there. He was the emergency 8th offensive lineman. Still working back from that calf injury. I just think they weren't comfortable putting him in there yet if they didn't have to. But I would expect him to be the starter if he's healthy. But no, I mean, one week in, again, the first hurdle was not particularly high off the ground, but you can still trip over it if you're not if you can't jump high enough. And they got over it. Now Micah Parsons is a much higher hurdle. And
pretty big.
Can you deal with that? We'll see. But I can't say I'm upset about what I saw from the offensive line.
No, and what my favorite texter from last night on the postgame show on WWL, it says, I'm not getting too hyped over a week 1 victory over the Panthers, but fellas, we're going to the fucking Super Bowl.
I don't want to get too far over my skis here, but I am currently snowballing down a hill
Yes.
and causing an avalanche, just to be clear. I'm excited. You know, it's nice to be back in a rational optimism land where which is where you should be in the first couple weeks of an NFL season before
and it felt good to be home.
Before you've been knocked down to reality yet.
You felt the home field advantage yesterday was nice. Obviously, everyone worried about, we hear from, the secondary market of tickets, and they're so low to get into this game. And I just felt the energy was there. Obviously, the team performance early on and being able to keep the foot on the throat, so to speak, and kept running with it all over the Panthers helped. But man, oh man, there were those who dat chants breaking out, and you're like, man, it didn't feel like a reality I had been a part in a while.
Yeah, no, and those tickets aren't going to be cheap for very long if they keep winning games the way.
No, especially with Philly coming to town, I guarantee there's not going to be $11 tickets for that.
Yeah, I have a feeling. Yeah, you're going to have to break out the checkbook a little bit more extensively for those Eagles tickets. But all right, you good? I think. Oh, one other thing. There's a tropical storm. Maybe hits the Saints or hits the New Orleans area this week. The funny thing is, the Saints are going to Dallas, which is where they'd probably go if they had to anyway. So I'm just throwing this out there right now. If the projections as they sit kind of now continue to shift this way, I honestly wouldn't be surprised if we see the Saints go out to Dallas on like Thursday. Just a note.
It won't have zoomed by Thursday?
I think Friday is like let's see. I'm curious.
I thought we're supposed to get hit Wednesday night, and it's going fast, so hopefully it keeps on trucking right by.
I heard Friday initially. Let's see. I mean, They don't know. It's at this point, it's still too far out to get a good idea of exactly what you're looking at. But yeah, you're right. It would be through here on Wednesday. So never mind. I take it back.
I guess maybe there's a scenario where they decide, hey, we could leave tomorrow. If they're worried that much about it, maybe being a factor. I don't know with the new indoor facility either, how much would be a problem with the hurricane as well. It doesn't seem like they're anywhere close to being done over there.
They're going to have to clean up some of that stuff for sure.
Yeah.
Because it's all over the place. But that's it's not anything I...
above my pay grade, as the players would say.
Katie says, man, I want to be a weatherman. I can be wrong like 90% of the time and still keep my job. Hey, I'm wrong like 90% of the time and I still keep my job. So there you go.
No, in our scenario, though, you just got to own it. You can't just be, waffle on things and be like, well, it was because and blah, 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 blah. like one of our good buddy was with the former Falcons quarterback that predicted the Saints to be bottom of the barrel in the NFC South.
Good old Kurt. Good old Kurt. He said they're only going to win one game, but they got it out of the way early. So, can't wait.
Everything's lanyap now.
Can't wait. Can't wait. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner. All right. I think we've done it. I think we have. You feel good? You feel like we did enough?
Klint Kubiak for president. I feel great.
Yeah. The Cougs.
The Cougs.
The New Orleans Cougs. All right. Who dat? Go Saints. Thanks, everyone, for hanging out again. Thanks, everyone who dropped in a comment. This was a lot of fun. Hopefully, we can continue to have more fun. Football's supposed to be fun. Football's supposed to be fun. I'm going to say it again. Football's supposed to be fun. And right now, it's fun. So hopefully, we can keep that going. Steve, how you feeling? Feeling good?
We're on to Dallas.
On to Dallas. Who dat? I'll be back here on Wednesday, give you a breakdown of the initial injury report. Hopefully, there's not a hurricane attacking us as that happens. I'll keep an eye out. Looks good right now. But we'll be back. Thanks, everyone. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do that. You can follow me on Twitter at Jeff_Nowak. DMs are open. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you want to hear anything specific. We'll try to get into as much as you want. At Steve Geller, WWL is that guy. You can follow the show at Saints_pod. Check out the latest news, notes, and analysis at WWL.com. Dennis Allen is on WWL today. Is that correct? Did I make that up?
DA and special teams coordinator Darren Rizzi.
And special teams coordinator Darren Rizzi. He'll be chatting with Mike Detillier and Bobby Hebert. So tune in for that. I know I will. And as always, who dat? Go Saints. Be easy, y'all.
1-0.
1-0.